Shabbat Shalom. One day, two of Rabbi Hanina's students were headed to the woods to chop firewood. And as they passed through the marketplace and by the various shops and stalls, a fortune teller pointed to them and said, "Those two will go out, but they will not come back." That evening, the two students returned to town, each of them carrying a bundle of chopped wood. And as they passed back through the marketplace, people began to taunt the fortune teller, saying, you're a fraud, you're a charlatan. You predicted that those two wouldn't make it, and here they are. And the fortune teller began to get a little bit agitated, a little bit indignant, defensive maybe. And he insisted that the two young men stop, and he asked to check their wood piles. And as they spread the chopped wood out, they found a viper, half in one pile, half in the other, neatly severed by the axe. And he began to ask them, "Tell us the story of your day. What happened while you were out? How did it come to be that you're in the middle of chopping wood and this deadly snake happens to be right there as the axe comes down?" And they said, "Honestly, we hadn't noticed the snake at all until just now." He said, "Well, tell us the story. Tell us your day." They said, "Well, we had set out into the forest. We began chopping wood. We took a break to eat. And as we began to eat, we saw an old man come by on the path. And he came over to us and asked us to share the food with him. He said he hadn't eaten for several days. He had been out on the road destitute. And we had just brought this one loaf of bread, but we divided it in half, and we gave him half, and then we split the other half." And the fortune teller looked up at the assembled crowd and said, "What is a man like me to do when their God is satisfied with half a loaf?" By which he meant to say, I was right. I saw that these two were doomed. But I didn't count on their simple act of charity averting the fate that had been decreed in heaven. There's a world of Torah in that one story. Because ultimately, again and again, the stories that we read and the lessons that we teach come back to this one idea: that humans are differentiated from the rest of creation by our capacity for choice and for moral judgment. Morality is not a frame that makes any sense when we talk about animals. We wouldn't say that a wolf is bad when it eats a sheep, even if the farmer might not like that the wolf ate the sheep. That's what it means to be a wolf. And animal instincts will change and evolve over a long period of time, but there's never a point at which a wolf will think, I really want to eat that sheep, but boy, it wouldn't be nice, so I'm going to have a salad. The wolf is hungry and it eats, or it's not hungry and it doesn't eat. We're the only ones who ask, should I do this? We have instinctual drives. There are things that we want, things that we fear, and then we take those drives and we shape them and curb them, direct them, restrain them, or set them loose as we choose. Every day, I think about, there's the famous line from Mr. Rogers that when you see a terrible thing in the world, look for the helpers. Because every day, all around us, we watch people act in ways that do nothing for their immediate self-interest, that maybe even have a significant cost to themselves. And they do those things because it serves some other beneficial purpose. Like the best of us, each of us at our best, transcend whatever it is that I, the animal being, need in this moment, to achieve something that is greater for all of us. And sadly, we also see that people disregard inevitable consequences to themselves and especially to others as they indulge immediate desires. Whether that's about ignoring the impact of industrial activities on the natural world, caring less about consequences that will come to unfold at a later time when they won't really impact us as much, or thinking about actions in terms of how it benefits me or my family or my community, and being willing to accept a negative cost on others who are not like me. And maybe that would be okay if that was as far as it went, but the human capacity for choice actually magnifies the consequences of our actions, for better and not better. So that when we make choices in business, when elected representatives are making decisions that prioritize their own careers or their own political interests over their duty to constituents, over truly their duty to the entire population, when we allow fear or envy to blunt our empathy for people who don't look, live, or act like us, actually our ability to choose, to make a good choice or otherwise, amplifies the impact that these decisions have. And while many would say, well, the world is what it is, our tradition disagrees. Right? And indeed, the message of the story of Rabbi Hanina's students, in some sense, is that nothing just is what it is, but that everything is tied to the decisions that we make to withhold or to share, to look away or to comfort, to pull back or to reach out. In this morning's Parsha, Avram shares with God his fear that childless, his legacy will not live on. He has become rich and honored and popular and powerful even in a land that he did not grow up in. And yet ultimately he looks around and he says, this is it. Right? I'm 90-something years old and I have no kids, and what's going to be? And in response, we get a striking scene, right? It's not just that God says to him, don't worry, I'm going to take care of it. The Torah says God took him outside and said, look toward the heaven and count the stars if you're able to count them, continuing, so shall your offspring be. Right? And if you've ever had the privilege of being outside at night under a desert sky, I mean, you can imagine what that looks like. Just stars everywhere. The word in the verse here for look, habet, is an unusual word. Right? It's used only 4 times in the Torah, including the one that we have in this week's Parsha, and only a dozen more times in the rest of the Bible. And so the commentaries are interested, like, what is it about Habet? What kind of a looking is this that God wants Avram to do in this moment of fear? And so Malbim, the great 19th century commentator who's especially sensitive to language, he says, Habet is the way you look when you are carefully paying attention to something and considering the implications, really absorbing everything that has to tell you. Right? We almost might imagine God saying to Avram, examine the heavens. Really take it in. Right? And if you've looked at the stars, you know that wondrous call of the heavens under a clear night sky, that reminder that we are all at once small and significant. It's small. Of all of those stars in the sky, the one we don't see at night, the closest one to us, our sun, is 93 million miles away. And the next closest star, Proxima Centauri, is 25 trillion miles from here. I can repeat those numbers to you, which I looked up before Shabbat. I honestly cannot make sense of such large distances. Like, I'm 5'8". What's 93 million miles? Like, I don't even know. And yet, right, so as tiny as we are, here we are. And the odds against life existing anywhere, let alone on this planet, are enormous. And here we are. Right? We're small and significant. Not only are we here, we've settled across the face of the earth and explored to the bottom of the ocean and put people on the moon. Right? It's incredible. And so in showing Avram the stars, God wants him to understand that there's actually something similarly small and significant about our inner nature. Right? So just as we're limited, but we're not constrained by our physical surroundings, right? I mean, gravity holds us down, but we can get to space. We're not compelled, not by our instincts, not by any kind of fate, to act in any particular way. Right? We have instincts that are there. We have ingrained habits that we have trained in ourselves. And they're going to pull us in certain directions. And we're not in control of the world around us, but we're far from helpless. And this is one of the themes. The Torah is going to come back to this again and again and again. Nothing is just what it is. There are always opportunities for us to shape and influence the course of things around us. But I'll often find myself saying to people, saying to my children especially, right? Like, we don't control the world around us, but we influence far more than we really recognize, that we really understand. And I want us all to hold on to that. There's so much that feels out of control in the country, in the world, probably in our own families. And yeah, right, we don't have control. Right? How many times a day is there a situation where I think, I wish there was a button I could push to fix this? I love fixing things around the house. It's very satisfying to, you just fix that hinge and the door doesn't squeak anymore. And our lives are not like that. We can't forget that even without control, we have the ability to make choices that will shape things. To put kindness first. To notice how we are impacting others. and ultimately to make the choices that will benefit us and will benefit all of us. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.